Sooner Nation, Thunder Nation, we are back. This is the Just Okay Sports podcast. That's just Oklahoma sports, and it's just okay as well. I am Daryl, one of your hosts, and I'm with my brother Jared, aka the J Rod Master. Now, by the way, since we've potted, you have transitioned yet again. You went from Oklahoma to deep southeast conference territory of Florida,
Florida.
and now you are transitioning to the Big East, the
Yeah, I guess
ACC.
the Big East, ACC, because like Pitt,
Technically, I guess you could be Big Ten,
Big Ten a little bit. Yeah, I'm not far from Ohio or
Penn
West
State,
Virginia,
right?
so
Penn
I'm kind of in
State.
the middle because like West Virginia's not far, so a little bit of
Wow.
everything.
And how is it going for you so far? So,
It's good. It's good. I like it actually up here. Got a lot of snow. We actually had a tornado. Well, it was like I don't know if it was actually a tornado, but we had like tornado warning one day, and I was like, oh, it feels like home. So
nice.
but yeah, no, it's been pretty chill. I like it up here. It's really really pretty. So I'm I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you got there safely. It has been, I mean, more than a minute. It's the kids like to say it's been a minute, but it's been an hour, I think, since we've done a pod. It's been a long, long minute. I think maybe like right after Mateer like committed was our last pod.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
pretty
been, dude.
sure.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Um,
Golly.
yeah. So there's been a lot of stuff happened since then. So there's,
There There has been a lot. And so tonight, just so you know, our kind of breakdown for this evening, we are going to start with the Thunder because obviously they are owning it. It is in the middle of the height of their season. So we're going to kick off there. We're going to talk some OU women's basketball. We got to. There was some big news, some big happenings there for them. And then we're going to get into the spring ball of the Sooners and just kind of give our thoughts as we've kind of been hearing some things, watching all the videos that you've been watching and just kind of give our own little perspective on that side of things. And speaking of the Thunder, they're getting ready to, or they've got a game
they
going
are.
right
Yeah, it's
now. Yeah,
12-10 right now.
12-10 right now against the Sacramento Kings. So we'll see what that is, on all those things. But let's start with the Thunder, Jared. So, first of all, last year you got to give it up to yourself because you were the one who picked over 50 wins. Troy and I were totally wussing out on that prediction. But I was the one this year that said that they were going to break a franchise record for wins in a season, and I believe we're like two away, maybe something like that,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
hitting that mark. So, going to give it up to myself for that. But what an incredible season these guys have had. And it's going. How much have you gotten to watch, especially over the last couple months, coming out of All Star break and all those things?
I've watched a decent bit. It's being up here. It's whether it's in blackout or not or whatever. Um, but I've got to watch a decent bit. I mean, they, coming out of the All-Star break, they were a little rough. Looked a little shaky, but they got it righted. So, and the thing is, even when they were shaky, they really didn't lose much momentum as far as their lead in the West. I think everybody kind of came out. All the good teams seemed to come out a little bit that way. So,
Mhm.
um, I mean, the landscape's different, but I think they're in a really good position to be playing really, really well. Shea should, knock on wood, should win the MVP this year.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say when the odds are minus 2,000, uh, there's a good chance, that the votes are going your way.
yeah. So I think the big question everybody's going to be, now it's like, are they going to be able to beat the Lakers? Are they going to be able to beat,
Right.
in a 7 game series? That's pretty tough. I mean, I still have questions about the Lakers. I'm still not buying as much Laker stock, I think, as everybody else is. While I
No.
know that them having LeBron and Luca is a crazy combo,
Right.
they have a lot to be left to be desired when it comes to a big down low. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean they've looked really good. I've been very impressed. Obviously Chet's back, playing well, so that helps a lot. That was something. That's what's kind of crazy when you think about the Thunder team, and we've talked about it a little bit, but it's just like they played to such a high level without Chet.
Yeah.
Like, and so now him being back in that formula and getting that chemistry and all that back is going to be a lot of momentum going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because, currently the thing you hear people say all the time is, man, the Thunder just keep rolling while their all-star J-Dub is out injured, right? They're missing their all-star. But if you go all the way back to the start of the season, Chet was the one that we were all saying was going to make an all-star team. Like when he started, he was the second best player on this team, and it wasn't close, to be honest. And then he goes out, and J Dub did come in and have an all star season. I mean, and he may have gotten there with Chet. You don't know, but it's just funny how you know, he was gone for so long. Like even the national media has kind of forgotten the start that Chet was on to begin the season and just how well he was playing. And I feel like probably the last 3 to 4 games, he's really kind of brought his game back, where he's really gotten comfortable and gotten in his groove. And so it's fun to watch, man. And I think one of the things that's remarkable, and we talked about this for the season about how many games would they win when they're, doing load management or guys are taking nights off because this team is so deep, right?
Right.
And sure enough, I mean, you've got the game where they sit virtually every single starter, the night before they play Boston, and they win by like 15. Like just the other night, they sit half the team, and half the starters. J Dub out injured. I think our iHeart sat. Chet, Sally, all these people are sitting, and lo and behold, Aaron Wiggins starts going off for 30 and 40-point games to carry the team. It is remarkable how deep they are, and how well they're
Yeah.
playing. I think my only reservation still is will this continue in the playoffs? Right when the intensity really ramps up on defense. Like already, one of the things that we see in the regular season is that this team without Shea on the floor offensively struggles mightily. And so, what's going to happen when the intensity is way higher in the playoffs? How is this team going to handle that? Because Shea can't play 40 minutes a night for an entire playoff run. Like, that just can't be the case. And so, how do you feel about this team in the playoffs with just knowing how the playoffs go and the intensity ramp up? Do you feel like we're going to see this team kind of take a step way back and be more even with everybody than what they are right now in the standings?
No, I mean, I think last year they learned a lot, and they just ran to a Mavericks team that was just hot, right? I mean, and there's, in basketball, there's sometimes just not a lot you can do about that. I mean, um, but I think, from them, that was their first kind of playoff experience, if you will. I know they played in the play-in, I think it was the year before, but
Mm-hmm.
as a team, this unit, that was their first real tour, if you will, in the playoffs that really was meaningful. And I think they showed a lot of good stuff, but I think that they had a lot of you could see a lot of the growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this year, I think they'll be a lot better. And like I said, I expect them to, I think they get to the first round fine. And then, I think, depending on how the bracket breaks out and stuff, I could see them playing, like I said, like a team like the Lakers or
Mm-hmm.
Denver. And I think they're more equipped, they have, um, a healthier unit right now. They're able to, and really even where they're at now, it's like they win a few more games and they can just rest everybody and
Yeah.
it's fine. Um, so that's gonna probably play a big role in it. I mean, they're already what are they like? I think they still have a 7 game, 8 game lead over.
Oh, it's bigger than that, I think. But I'll look it up while you're.
But yeah,
Um,
I mean, so like I said, they've set themselves in a position where they're going to be much more rested and prepared to get into the playoffs. And like I said, and like that's the other part about the Lakers is it's like I don't think like a team like the Lakers seems to be what everybody's talking about in this playoffs from the Western Conference, right? Outside of the Thunder, obviously. Which I get, like I said, with the Luka trade and all that, but they seem like that team that if they get into they start getting into if they get to the Western Conference Finals and it's OKC versus the Lakers, it's like yeah, I don't think they're going to sweep them, but I also think that team's going to be tired by then. Like you've got an
mm-hmm.
aging LeBron, you've
Right.
got a Luka that showed that he wears down once he gets deep in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like your two best players are probably going to be showing a little bit of that wear and tear.
Right.
Um, so I think that they're much more equipped. I think I really feel pretty confident that they'll make a deep run in the playoffs. I think they'll at least get to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah. And one thing that I think gives me hope for this team in the playoffs is I do think is their depth. I mean, like last year, when you think about when Dort would get in foul trouble, for instance, well, that's when Luka had his best games, were the games where Dort was struggling, on the foul side of things. Now, overall, Luka had a terrible series against us in the playoffs last year. I mean, he did not produce well. PJ Washington, on the other hand, had a, playoff series of his entire career and has continued that into this year. Um, but this year, if Dort gets in foul trouble, you have Caruso to throw at whoever their best player is, and if Caruso gets in foul trouble, you have Kaysen to throw at whoever. And J Dub has really shown incredible improvement on the defensive end as well. Now, I think the question is, can he really go all out on defense and maintain um, on offense? Which, by the way, finally it came up on here. The Thunder currently hold a 13 and a half game lead over second place in the West,
Yeah,
and
it's
they
nuts.
also own the overall best record. They have now passed Cleveland, and if they win tonight, they'll continue to hold on to it. But they have a 2 game lead on Cleveland for the number one seed and home court advantage throughout the playoffs, including the finals. So hopefully, even while resting some players, I do think that that is an important thing for the Thunder is to maintain home court advantage throughout the playoffs. I think would be really big for them for sure.
Yeah, I mean their record's insane on both fronts. Obviously, when you've what is their record right now?
Their record is currently 59 and 12.
Yeah, when you've only lost 12 games in a season,
Yeah.
that's pretty nuts. So, um, I definitely think that it's going to be some of the, yeah, I think they're definitely, I mean, they're pretty close to locking that up, but I mean, the thing is that they're going to be really, like I said, that's the thing is they're set up now way more than they were last season, even.
Yep.
Even though they came in as the number one seed last year from the West, um, it was just a lot closer of a race, right? And they were
Hmm.
having to play everybody, and they were fighting until the very last game of the regular season. And this year it's like I honestly like the last I don't 4 or 5 games even they could just take everybody out and say you're resting,
Yeah.
and it's fine. So when you're in that position, you come in the playoffs, it's like at this point it's more of managing how much rest do you give them and or how much do you avoid letting them get rusty,
Right.
right?
Right.
Which is an insane problem to have, right? So um yeah, I mean I think like I said they're just set up way better this year.
Yeah.
So I like I said, if they don't make it to the Western Conference Finals, I feel like that's a flop of a playoff series, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, I agree. I do think I think it'll be interesting when the playoffs come, and I'm excited to get Troy back on to talk about this. But um, I do think teams are going to blitz Shea a lot, and so that'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Night after night after night of just Shea just getting blitzed the minute he touches the ball every time, and how the rest of the team responds to that. I think that'll be kind of fascinating to see how they deal with that, and I think it's going to be really fascinating. I think it needs to be either Aaron Wiggins or J Dub who takes over the second unit, and when Shea's off the floor, initiates that offense and gets it moving in the right direction and is setting people up. And they have both kind of struggled with that throughout the season, and so we'll see what happens there. But again, so far so good for this season. They're definitely earning the respect, I think, of the league, which is nice, and we'll see. And again, if they win a playoff series this year, they're going to be the second youngest team to win a playoff series in NBA history. So,
The crazy thing too is depending on how some of the Eastern Conference shakes out, like I think it's Brooklyn, Toronto, and the Sixers. The Thunder could end up with like was it the number 7 pick?
yes, because of it's Philadelphia's pick. It's top six protected.
Yeah,
And but the positive is if you don't get that pick this year, you get any of their whatever their first round pick is next year. You
yeah,
get which when you really think about the relationship of Embiid and that franchise right now, I would venture to say that he's probably not there next year. And so, if that's the case, then they're going to be right back in this position, and whatever first round pick they have, we're going to get, which is just awesome.
Well,
We'll
that's
see.
it's funny. My boss is a huge Sixers fan, so we're always even like we had a one-on-one today, and so we spent like 10 minutes talking about basketball. And he actually went to Atlanta. They do like a thing where like the Sixers have like a club of fans that travel to games or whatever.
Oh gosh.
And so he went to Atlanta to watch them play the Hawks, and the Sixers lost, and he was like, weirdly, now I'm kind of happy that they lost, so we can make sure we protect our pick. And I was like, yeah. So I've been telling him, I'm like, I'm the biggest Sixers fan now, but
Yeah,
that franchise is I just yeah, that's a weird one. But anyway, not to get off the Thunder, but yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, I say it every time. It's just the Sam Presti is a wizard, man. Like that
yeah.
dude's he's got a crystal ball or something because the dude's got we got a stockpile of picks and we've
Hmm.
already got a raw. That's why I told him I was like, if we got the pick, don't get me wrong, I'd be happy, but it's like we don't need the pick. Like
Yeah,
it's all luxury at this point, you know? I
right.
mean, so you'd like to get a piece to help, but it's like honestly at this point like you have guys that have been coming off the bench deep in the bench that have been playing extremely high level and they're not getting a ton of time because just the
Right.
sheer talent of this team is so
Yeah.
high.
Yeah, it's really wild. So just crazy stuff. So be interesting to see, which by the way, update, it's 26-19. They're looking good right now.
31-19, by the way, I guess
Oh,
I'm ahead.
30. Oh, I'm way behind you. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's the good old Hulu 6 minute delay there.
Yeah.
And so they're looking good against Sacramento, which they should, a team that is struggling a little bit. Let's talk for a moment a little bit of women's basketball, shall we? I feel like, well, first of all, I think it has been clear on this podcast for those two of you that listen, but I do feel like I have been very outspoken that I believe that Jennie Barancyck is one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. I think she proved it in these first couple rounds. Finally getting over the hump, with OU getting to the Sweet 16, which they haven't been to, I believe, since like 2013. I think is the last time they've been to the Sweet 16. And so just an incredible job. And dude, I did not see what really was a 40-point rout of Iowa coming in round two. I thought that game would be, a little bit back and forth, and I mean, it just wasn't even close. It
Yeah.
was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the momentum she has from that program because we like I said we all guessed when she started we're like well in 2 or 3 years she might have this program rolling and it's like she's had it rolling from day one.
Yeah,
She's got them far ahead of the men's team, which we thought was in a better place. When the transitions happened. Um, but yeah, I mean she's lighting it up, and I mean and they look really good. They play really hard, so we'll see how deep. But yeah, I mean, a 40-point blowout of anybody is pretty crazy.
yeah. I mean, you get to the second round of women's basketball. You have your South Carolinas, your team. There's that two or three that are just at the top right now above everybody. LSU, Texas, probably all up there. But the rest of college basketball for the women's side is pretty close, pretty tight throughout. Which, by the way, not only that, but luck is now a little bit on the side of the Sooners as well. Because if you're not been following your bracket, we have an incredibly tough game against UConn, which I do think will be a very difficult game, and I'm not sure. But if you get past that game, the number one seed in our bracket is USC, and their best player, like WNBA bound player, I believe, had an ACL injury in their last game. And so while they got the win, they lost their best player. And she is really what makes that team go. So, I mean, if somehow, some way you can pull out a victory in this Sweet 16 match, you have an opportunity. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I would just say it that way. You have an opportunity. You're going to have to play the fifth seed, Kansas State most likely. Maybe USC still pulls out a win, but I think it's going to be Kansas State that will pull that game out as long as they come ready to play. And so we'll see. And I mean, UConn is still definitely one of the perennial women's programs out there, but they are not what they were, back in the 2000s, early 2000s, and even teens of the 2000s.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're still really, really good. But man, just an incredible performance all the way around for this team. And so love it. And by the way, Sooner Nation, good job. I thought I still do not understand how NCAA women's I guess officials doing all the timing of things gives the host team of a regional a freaking 3 o'clock in the afternoon game on a Monday. Like, what are we doing? NCAA tournament. Like,
Yeah.
not only that, it should have been a good game. I know it ended up being a blowout, so if it would have been in prime time, that wouldn't have been great. But offering the home fans, a chance to not get to go at a 7 o'clock game, but a 3 o'clock game was just terrible planning by the NCAA.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't get that either. So, not, I mean, we could have a whole pod about how the NCAA in every sport is not the
Oh,
best, but in a number of ways.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, and then like you said, we haven't even talked about she landed the number one recruit. Um,
And by
so
the way, Texas fans are salty. I mean, salty. They are pissed about this one, man.
yeah, yeah, so that's gonna be fun to see. And I think, like I said, she just keeps building. So, and that's the thing is, it's like not to say she hasn't had talent on this roster, but when you get the number one player in the nation, what is she gonna be able to do with that is the question,
Right.
like so yeah, she's been lighting it up. So yeah, Josie, start writing checks, dude. Just start calling
Yeah.
boosters and begging for money
Yeah.
because she's doing a lot.
She is doing a whole lot. Now, there are a lot of rumors about how much money this young lady is getting. I don't know. I had multiple Texas fan friends texting me this afternoon of like, did you guys really just take your whole basketball budget and just give it to the women's team or what? Like, how are y'all getting, just, on and on and on about these things. One thing I think people don't understand though is because I was even talking to somebody about this the other day, it's going to be interesting to see, especially at a school like OU that's being successful right now. I think South Carolina's this way, like some of those. People are always going to be rabid for football, right? I mean, I say that college football may start to kind of lose its shine as we continue to make some of these transitions, right? But for the most part, people are going to give their money to college football and those kinds of things. But what people miss is schools like Oklahoma, your Alabamas, your LSUs, I mean, all those blue blood type programs that are just kind of sports ingrained. Texas is this way too, but there are women fans, if that makes sense, right, of these programs. And so I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was even like, he goes, yeah, his mom, who I know he's like has a lot of money. Uh, he's like, she is a major supporter of OU softball. That's what she supports. And so I think you've got a lot of powerful, rich women in these sports that are giving to these NIL programs specifically for women athletes, if that makes sense, which
Yeah,
I hadn't thought about it from that angle before, but hanging out and talking with some of those guys that were talking about whether it was their wife or their mom or whoever doing that kind of stuff, I was like, I had never thought about if I was a woman who was hyper successful and could just really give to NIL. Yeah, maybe I'm rabid for football and that's what I give my money to. But if I'm really rabid about women empowerment or women's sports, screw that. Y'all got plenty of money on that end. I'm gonna go give it on the women's end and let these programs right like take off and be great. And so that I think is a lot because there's been a lot of chatter of, well, if Jennie has that much NIL money, why doesn't Porter Moser have the money he says he needs on the guy's side? Well, let's be honest. What major booster of OU is giving to the basketball program outside of Trey Young and Blake Griffin?
yeah.
Right? Like, but you might have 15 or 20
And
powerful women giving to the women's programs just for the sake of giving to women's programs.
the problem with especially when you look at basketball, right? Like when you look more at that, like they're not to say there aren't blue bloods in basketball, especially in men's basketball, but I feel like in women's there's less, right? Like
Hmm.
you have UConn, you have Tennessee, LSU. I wouldn't even necessarily like South Carolina, kind of like because they're so hot lately,
Right
but like
now, I mean, they're the squad right
10 years
now for
ago, nobody
sure.
was talking about South
Right,
Carolina, right?
right.
So I don't even know that I'd put them in the blue blood category. Um, but you know what I mean? Like the ones that have been dominant forces in women's basketball for a long time, you think Tennessee,
Hmm.
LSU, UConn, what whatever. There's 4 or 5 schools where when you look at men's basketball, it's like you have a bunch of programs that have consistently been like you have Kansas, you have Duke, you have North
Hmm.
Carolina, you have I mean, you could go down the list and there's 20 or 30 programs that have consistently been in the tournament and been won championships. You could label as a blue blood. So Jennie trying to transfer Oklahoma into that is an easier transition than Porter Moser saying, I'm going to take Oklahoma and make a sack.
Right,
Because Oklahoma, as much as we're Oklahoma fans, basketball program hasn't been consistently good.
right.
Like what the early 2000s, and you had the Blake Griffin years, and then you had the Trey Young years. And then it's
Kelvin,
like,
the end of Kelvin's run, right? Like his
yeah, like
time
you like
here,
you had
like,
you had bursts here and there,
mm,
and outside of that, they've never consistently been good enough. They're nowhere near the category of blue blood.
right,
So it's like he's kind of in the dipple, to give him a little bit of defense or whoever is the head coach at Oklahoma at any point. It's like they have to go out and win. Like they have to get like if he'd gone deep into the tournament this year, right? Like say
right.
he made it to the Sweet 16 and then, next year did it again, then it's like okay, then you could start just build and say, look, like I'm able to get us there
Hmm.
and now I need a little bit of money so I can get us and we can go win a championship. But like
Hmm.
until you do that, the boosters aren't going to buy in.
Right,
That's just the nature of it. But with
right.
women's basketball, it's like she's already done a lot with little, or I
Hmm.
should say less than a lot of other programs. Um, and to break into being where you're like Oklahoma's a destination school for women's basketball is just a lower entry point right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's changing. I think women's basketball has picked up a lot of popularity.
Oh yeah.
But it's still at the same point. There's not. You could kind of, I guess, like people might try to say like Iowa or something, but it's like there's like 5 or 6 schools that you would say when you think women's basketball that you really think of. Like if you say women's basketball, I think UConn immediately, right?
Right.
But obviously there's some others, but so I
Well,
think
and
that
the
that's the
the other side of it, like you're saying too, is so that makes it easier for the women's side. And again, I think most people that are fans of, I hate to say it this way, but of male sports, right? There are some people out in the world that really don't care for women's sports all around. Now,
Mhm.
I don't get that, but that's the way it is. But if you also go through the history of the blue bloods of basketball, they're non-football schools. I mean,
Right.
again, if I'm the billionaire that went to OU and it's, hey, you can get us John Mateer or you can get us Jeremiah Fears, I want to get us Mateer, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can get us Arbuckle to be the offensive coordinator or you can get us an assistant to go with Porter Moser, I'm going to get Ben Arbuckle, right? Or so forth, Dominic Williams, so forth. Like that's what I mean. There's that competition. Whereas on the women's side of things, there's not a huge fan base for gymnastics, despite their dominance, over the last decade of women's gymnastics. And I would have to imagine that women gymnasts are not just raking in a ton of cash in NIL anyway, right? And then it's softball and basketball. That's it. But on the men's sports, there are people who like basketball. There's people who love football. There's people who love baseball. And I mean, so you've got more sports to compete with, and obviously football just takes up more money. And so I agree with you. I mean, so I just felt like it was worth mentioning on the pod for everybody that's trying to attack because they want Porter Moser gone because they thought he was going to be fired 2 months ago. In the midst of all this stuff, Jenny's got a fan base that is female centered. And Porter doesn't have, he is constantly fighting against football here. He does not get fan attendance, so there's not revenue coming in, right? Like in that way. So there's just a lot going against him in the midst of that. So I understand how Jenny has the money she has for NIL athletes compared to Porter. And also, I think that we're naive to believe that basketball players aren't making more because, like we've seen, one legit, unbelievable basketball player on your squad changes everything. Hence, Jeremiah Fears. You don't have
Yeah, I was gonna,
Jeremiah Fears on this squad, and it's over.
well, and and to give a point to Porter Moser, if he can keep having people show up like a Jeremiah Fears,
Right.
that's something to sell,
Yeah.
right? You have a name attached, Trey Young. Like you, that's the thing is that those were the flagpole carriers for like when you thought OU basketball, you thought Trey Young, or you thought Blake Griffin, or you thought Buddy Hield, or whoever it was in the era that you're talking about, right? Like those were the
Right.
guys carrying that. And if you can start saying like we have a track record of putting people in the NBA,
Right.
then you could do something. But right now it's like Jeremiah Fears, it's like he's phenomenal. I'm interested to see what happens with his career, but you got to do more than that. Like you got
Yeah.
to get if he can line up somebody else that turns out like a Jeremiah Fears, then okay, you have a product to sell. But like I said, that's just the state. The honest state is I know it's like he isn't it wasn't I guess terribly long ago, but like Trey Young's the last player that you really would say was of note for OU.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
that people would recognize.
Yep. That no, that's fair. And yeah, I mean, so it'll just be interesting to see where it goes. And as far as Jeremiah Fears go, for those of you that want the men's side to catch up to the women's side of basketball, you need to start hoping that there are two or three guys in this NCAA tournament that just go gangbusters. Because right now, Jeremiah Fears is slotted to be a lottery pick. The last mock draft I saw had Houston taking him with one of their picks that they've acquired from another squad in the lottery, and that he'd be going to Houston. And so if he's a lottery pick, he's not staying. If you can get him down to that bottom half of the first round, I still think he goes. I mean, I think if you're a first round NBA pick, you kind of have to go, and especially when you're barely 18 years old. But if I think you can get him towards that bottom, you could convince him, hey, like for instance, Porter's got a legit 6'10" forward coming in next year, a high caliber, player and a 7-footer from Europe. So one of the problems this team had this year was size, right, and being able to rebound and those things. So if you can do that and fill in with a few other pieces around there, you've got a squad that could really cook. And if Jeremiah Fears can take another step next year and kind of become one of the faces of the SEC, does he vault himself into the top half of the lottery? And then at that point, it's a major shoe deal, right? And it's a major contract and a guaranteed contract. Like all those things come with it. And so it'll be interesting to see. But I mean, I'd say right now it's an 85%, 92% chance that he's definitely going to the
Yeah,
draft.
I'm pretty certain he's going to the draft unless something drastic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying you need this tournament to just
When
somebody to go
when
crazy.
the kids should be getting ready for prom and he's trying to decide if he's going to the
Yeah.
NBA or not is just wild.
Yeah, it's
So,
super wild, super wild.
um, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the things that you and I are more comfortable talking about. Let's talk some spring football, shall we? It
All
is
right.
in the air. They've been going for a couple weeks now. They took a little break over spring break. Soul Mission took some guys down to Rio de Janeiro, did some charity work down there, did some cultural work. Some other guys just went and had a lot of fun. And then you've got John Mateer, Dion Burks, and Giovanni Gibson doing workouts together over spring break. So just loved seeing that. Thought that was absolutely awesome. So far, Jared, with all the things that you've seen, with all that we've heard, with the few people we have that think
We
they've
haven't even,
got inside information, what?
yeah, we haven't even talked about the Nagy hire.
Yeah, we have not. Well, let's start with that. How do you feel about the Nagy hire?
I mean, it's kind of funny because I felt like I mean, most people were positive about it, but then I saw like sort of mixed reaction, and I'm like, this guy could be a GM for an NFL team.
Yeah.
Like, he has the resume that he could be in the NFL very easily,
Mm-hmm.
and he chose OU. So, and I don't think he chose it. I'm sure money plays a part in that, but you also have to believe in what you're building if you're going to come to a school because, like, you don't want to be a GM, especially at the college level. You don't want to be a GM for a year or two. Like, you need to be there for a few before
Right.
you really to build your resume enough. Um, so I think it was a huge hire. And I think, you know, hopefully that system's changed a little bit. Hopefully, just based on like there was some rumblings we've heard and stuff. Hopefully he has a lot more control over things.
Mm-hmm.
And he was given a lot more, um, say and how they operate, because I think that was probably part of our issues last year with some of the injuries and just on and on.
Hmm.
As much as we love BV, I think he needs somebody that's going to reel him in. I feel like he's a guy that's able to have that sort of relationship with him where they can
Hmm.
have that candid conversation of, hey Brent, you're pushing the guys too hard, or hey Brent, you need to do
Yeah.
this, or
Yeah.
and being in the NFL, like having somebody that's got NFL experience is also just a major plus, because he's gonna have to have tough conversations with kids where he's gonna say, like, look, like, we love you, you're a great teammate, but we think you need to transfer out, or whatever. We're not
Yeah.
gonna be able to give you 200 grand. We're gonna give you 100
Right.
or whatever. Those sorts of conversation stuff that he's had on the regular. He's
Hmm.
not gonna be uncomfortable if he needs to go have those conversations.
Yeah.
So I think it's huge, and I think that that's probably, like, in my opinion, especially long term, I think that's a bigger get than Mateer was in the offseason.
Wow. All right, I'm going to come back to that statement at some point. But
Okay.
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 15 higher for me, right? Like
Yeah.
to get Nagy. Number one, deep roots in NFL scouting. So he knows what NFL teams are looking for, right? He knows, like, and I loved what he said. We need to be a traits based football team, right? After that, then it kind of comes down to what we need and money, all those different things. But we got to look for certain traits. But then you add into it his Senior Bowl experience. And, Gabe Ikers talked about this a lot on their pod. But the fact that this is a guy that, I mean, one of his jobs was to basically go find the G5, the D2, even the D3 guy that had NFL potential, right? And pull them into the Senior Bowl for these executives to see, right?
Mm.
And I mean, let's be real. 9 times out of 10, when you watch an NFL draft and you hear them say, with, the second round pick, yada, 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 they take from Abilene Christian University, yada, yada. Like, that's a senior, and it's a senior that most likely probably went through either the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl, right? And Nagy is the guy that was finding those guys. And so
Hmm.
I love that he has those connections. I love that he has seen that and he knows, again, what to look for. And I think he has a proven track record of not just that, but this is one of the questions you ask every time we have a transfer. And I think it's a fair question. But you, like, even with Mateer, you were very like, well, Mateer, like, whatever, but he played at Washington State. He played nobodies. So let me see him playing real people, right? But Nagy obviously has been able to see guys playing lesser competition and see what he needs to see to know that they can make the jump, right? And that excites me because let's be honest, we've not done great transfer portal wise. We've had a few guys, but overall it's not been awesome in the BV era, right? Um, Connor Neer, great example. We were all fired up. This guy's a whatever he was, like a two-time All-American. He had like an average of 110 tackles a season at D2 college football. We are like, surely that can translate, right? Like, surely this guy knows football. He doesn't play it down. Like, even when the defense still wasn't great, he's not playing it down. It's like, okay, yeah, that wasn't great. Like the stats were great, but no. But I think the other thing too that it helps on two fronts with Nagy. One, he's not an OU guy. And I think two, that he's not associated with Soul Mission. I think one of the things, this is just my own opinion. I think one of the things that they did not do well with Curtis Lofton, putting him in the GM role, is he was very much involved in Soul Mission. So you're expecting Curtis Lofton to be the guy that these guys can call him at 2 in the morning when they might be getting ready to do something stupid, and he's supposed to take care of them that way, right? He's supposed to pour into them and teach them what being a dad is all about and being a businessman is all about. But then he's the guy that's got to sit down with them and say, "Look, dude, we brought you here on a $300,000 contract because you were a 4 star and you suck, and we need to cut you to 1,000, right, or 100,000. I mean, like that. Okay. Not only that, he's an alum. So like he told this story on Gabe and Teddy's podcast after he stepped down when Justin Harrington left. They wanted Justin Harrington to stay. They thought he had a bright future at OU, and he said, "Look, man, here's what we're going to offer you. This is what your market is going to be. And he was about to sign, and then some agent calls him and tells him, "No, man, you're worth. I've got a school right now that's ready to give you 200K."
Yeah.
And so he went to Curtis and said, "Sorry, man, I got it." And he goes, "No, you don't." He goes, "No, my agent." He goes, "Who? What school? Tell me what school." And get this, OU I think offered him like a $50,000 NIL deal, and he goes with this agent who guarantees him 200K, and he signed for 25.
Hmm.
Right? Like, but their thought process was, well, you're an alum. You just want me to stay on the cheap. Like all these different, you're trying to leverage your relationship with me. Nagy's not any, dude, I could care less about OU. Like, I'm glad to be here, but it's not like I bled crimson. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
play in the NFL, bro. Like, I play that game. Here's what you look like in practice. Here's what you've been doing on Saturdays. Here's your worth.
Well,
You tell me why somebody's going to give you more than that.
and that's and that brings me to another good point of Nagy has the NFL connections, which regardless of whoever's head coach or whoever's a position coach or whatever can say, look, like I'm going to bring you in, and our GM knows the GM of
Yeah.
the Chicago Bears or whoever it is, right? Like he knows everybody in the NFL.
Yep.
So when you get to the level that you want to go to the NFL, this guy's going to be able to get you in rooms with those people.
Right.
Um, so that's big. And like I said, yeah, like you have to be if we're gonna live in the era of NIL where it is now. Nothing against Curtis Lofton. I absolutely love Curtis Lofton. One of my favorite all-time OU players. But like you said, when you put him in those positions, it's unfair to expect him to be cutthroat, right?
Right.
It's unfair for him to say, like you said, that to have to build relationships with these kids and then to turn around and say, well, hey, look, we're cutting your NIL into a quarter of what you're getting paid because you
Right.
suck. Um, so really unfair to him, like you said. So I agree with you. I think that that's a huge thing because don't get me wrong, I hate it, and I wish people came to play at OU for the pride of having Sooners written on their jersey or whatever.
Program guys. I wish there were
Yeah,
program guys still.
but that's a one in a thousand anymore, right? I mean, very few people are going to a school because they said I grew up wanting to be an Oklahoma Sooner now. Like
Right.
that's just not the reality of where we are. And when you have schools throwing 100, 200, 500, whatever $1 million deals at you. Like I grew up, we grew up rabid OU fans.
Yeah.
But if I had turned 18 and Texas came to me and said, "We're going to give you $2 million to come play here," hook them, bro. Like I don't know what to tell you. Um, it is what it is. That's the world we live in, and you have to have that cutthroat mentality. It's going to have to turn. It's
Yeah.
turning into the NFL.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
I
so
think
I
BV struggles with that too. And I think giving that to Nagy helps him as well.
yeah. So like I said, I think Nagy's. I think that was the that like at long term, I think that is the best, by far the best move OU made this offseason.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I can go that far, but it's really big.
Long
Um,
term, long term.
long term, yes. Long term, yes, because I it has been pretty much reported and confirmed no matter what happens with BV this year that Nagy's here beyond that. Like him and his
Yeah.
staff that he's going to put together is sticking around beyond that. So yeah, I think it's a great hire. I think it's a great move. All those things. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm very interested to see what this spring portal is going to look like and how that's going to go.
Yeah,
So
with his scouting background, that's like you said earlier, that's going to help because and like I said, I'm not a guy to clarify, it's like I don't think there's guys that come from D2 or smaller schools or whatever that can't play in D1 and be successful and be even really, really
oh
good.
right
But out of if you do take 100 of those people, two or three are the ones that really turn into a
right
very solid product,
right like
right?
a
So it's
true difference maker for your
yeah, like
team.
you have like a Warren Moon or whatever, like whoever. Like I'm just trying to think of somebody that's a big D2 guy, right? That went on and had a big career in the NFL or whatever. It's like yeah, there's a few of them here and there, but most of the ones that did not succeed. Like those are the exceptions, not the rule. Um, so yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I'm bought in on it. So that's probably the best thing for the offseason for me so far.
Yeah. Um, for sure. All right, so moving to the team. Lots of reports out. The media gets to watch them run around in shorts and pads and send a few videos out. Everybody's giving their reports on different things and what they're hearing and what they're not hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So far through, let's talk about the concerns. We always do bad news first so we can end on the positive. So, what so far have you seen, heard, are hearing from some of the people you get to talk to, Jared, that has you concerned going into the 2025 season?
I mean, I think the injuries, like there's a lot of people out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, is that going to carry over? I mean, it's good that they're getting to rest them and try to get them healthy before the season starts,
Mm-hmm.
but still concerning, especially when you had the year you had last year where you felt like half the team was injured.
Yeah.
Um, so what's that gonna lead to, right? That raises a whole other list of concerns. So I think that that's a big thing because it's like when you look at that list too, it's like this isn't we're not talking about the third string guys are hurt. We're talking, Jaden Jackson has missed time, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a whole list of people that are solid big time contributors with we think bright futures that are having to take the offseason off.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest concern is we need to stop that from happening. I mean,
Yeah.
you're never going to stop injuries completely, and sometimes you just get unlucky. But if we have a season again like we did last year
Yeah.
with injuries, then we have to take a solid look at Schmitty and what
Yeah.
we're doing with recovery and the doctors and whatever, because that's unacceptable. If that
Yeah.
happens 2 years in a row, that's not a bad luck season. That's a pattern.
Right. No, totally agree. The thing that makes me not so worried is like for instance, like, Dion Burks was one of the injuries, right? He was practicing today, full go, moving. Uh Jaden Jackson, I think, obviously it's always concerning when your young linemen, Jaden Jackson, Logan Howland, Heath Ozada, are all out and they all have the same injury. I think that's what concerns me. But that all also happened during the season. And so all of those guys going through recovery right now is not like last year where it was just got dropping like flies in the preseason with different injuries, right? This is all stuff that was lingering from actual in-season play, and all three of them played. I mean, apparently Jaden Jackson played 5 or 6 games with this labrum injury, and was nothing but a freshman All-American. No big deal. So, that part I feel good. I think we could all clearly say that once Logan Howland and Heath Ozada were kind of solidified on the left side as okay, we're running with you too, let's go. That the entire offensive line situation did not look good, but it took a major step forward, and they were playing with broken shoulders pretty much throughout that entire run. And so that just makes me hopeful. I mean, yes, I would love for them to be getting reps right now. I would love for them, but like those guys to me have shown me they can play. So at this point, get healthy, and then if you can even get June, July, and August of strength training, all those kinds of things going, you should be okay by the start of season, right? And you can still take your mental reps and those kinds of things. But definitely, I think we're all keeping an eye out on what is the injury situation going to be with OU this year after last year. And we talked about it like on this pod last year. We were hearing rumors of between Schmitty and BV's practice regiment through fall camp that there were people going, Coach, you've got to pull it back. You are going to run these guys in the ground. It kind of felt like that's what happened a little bit last year. So it seems like they're trying to be more serious about that. We'll see. For me, um, I'd say like what has me concerned the most right now is, I mean, I don't think it's a shocker, but the tight end room does not sound great.
Yeah.
You know, um, that was one of the areas we felt like at the end of the season was going to be majorly addressed, right? We like, and I kept saying it forever. Surely Joe John Finley's gone. They're not firing him because they're going to let him go find another job, etc. Well, that didn't happen. And then everybody just kept, oh, it's going to, it's going to, it's going to. Well, it didn't happen. Like he's still here. And we have not seen great improvement at anybody in that room, any development in that room with him here. Now he landed Davin Mitchell, great. But like even today, listening to Mateer after practice, Davin's name doesn't come up one time. Jaron Canick's name does. That's concerning, right? And what we know, even Kobe McKenzie on the radio 2 weeks ago, Jaron Canick legitimately lives in the facility. Even when he was in the linebacker room, he was in there every minute, every hour of every day that he could possibly be in there trying to figure it out and get better. And he's doing it now at tight end. So his own drive is going to make him potentially be a factor in there. But
Mhm.
Davin Mitchell at 6'5", and whatever his weight actually is, there's all kinds of fighting going on about that too, should be a force on this team. The dude has some of the best hands I've ever seen. He should be a factor. And the fact that John Mateer's not saying his name at all when asked about tight ends is a little concerning, because that is a position, especially in the SEC, that can help a quarterback out so much. And the fact that we've got nothing there is highly concerning.
Well, I mean, not to bring up the evil man's name, but Tebow, uh, Riley is definitely like he was that guy that it's like how he utilized the H back slash tight
Yeah.
end position extremely well.
Yeah.
If your quarterback got in trouble, then it's like you probably had a tight end that was doing a rollout that you could drop it off to and at least get 2 or 3 yards. Um, he schemed them out and he schemed them open really well for big plays. I mean, obviously had phenomenal talents and Mark Andrews and others, but um, yeah, like you said, like they're still running a very similar offense to that, but you don't have a tight end that's been worth scheming. I mean, last year we've already talked about they didn't scheme anything.
Right.
Um, but it's like right now, it's like I don't even know. I would rather you scheme open another receiver than scheme open a tight end, from what I know of that room.
Right.
Um, because it's just there's not a lot there. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no proven. Like you said, we were drooling over Davin Mitchell. We thought like this guy is going to be a force, and then he's done nothing, done absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I
And
don't
I,
disagree
I
with
was
you.
and I was super hopeful. We came on here after the bowl game when he sent that tweet out when everybody was like, "Why is Davin Mitchell not playing?" And Davin Mitchell basically took up for the coaching staff and said, "I'm the problem, not the coaches. I'm the problem." Um, but based on some things I'm hearing right now, it sounds as though uh, he's still the problem. And so I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to help with that, but that's concerning in that regard. So, we'll see. How about on the hopeful side? Let's go positive. Let's finish this thing strong. What have you heard? What have you seen that you're just like, uh-oh, this team's going to the playoff and maybe making a run to win it all in BV's fourth year?
Um, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, I think moving Jaron Canick to the offensive side of the ball is a phenomenally smart move. I didn't know that they would ever do it. I mean, I think I like I said, I actually thought he was a great linebacker, or I should say, I thought he was close to being a great linebacker.
Mm.
I think he needed to refine himself a little bit, and I thought he'd be a great linebacker, but uh his athleticism is just we've everybody's talked about it. Like he's been
Yeah.
phenomenal. So getting in somebody like that, but also like I guess that's secondary to I got to give it to John Mateer. Like I had my doubts and I still have my doubts, but something that I kind of had a realization of as I've heard more and more about him doing these workouts on his own and setting up a lot of things, and he's one of those guys that's working really, really hard. Did we ever hear that about Jackson Arnold? Did we
We
ever
really
really
didn't.
hear like that he was just that guy that was just in the building and he was like every once in a while you hear, oh, he stayed late and he threw with the receivers, like every once
Yeah.
in a while.
Yeah.
But it was never it's spring break and he's setting up practices and he's doing 7-on-7s or he's doing whatever. Like you never heard that about him. You heard about
Right.
Dylan Gabriel.
Right.
So to have that kind of character as your quarterback,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that we've talked about. Baker was that way. Even like all the great quarterbacks have been that way, where it's like they just had that work ethic, and when you have that sort of work ethic and you have that sort of leadership, it infects everybody around you, right?
Yep.
You don't want to be the guy that says, oh, you're doing 7-on-7, like all the offensive guys are doing 7-on-7 or whatever, or they all are out throwing, I'm gonna go head to my dorm room.
Yeah,
Like you don't want to be that guy.
right.
So it makes everybody better. So that's good to hear because you want to have that. There's a lot of guys on this team that hopefully Davin Mitchell gets caught into it because
Yeah.
just to use him as an example, there's a lot of potential there. There's when you look at him and you look at his metrics, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
the dude should be a force.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of between the ears and the work ethic, and if he can get that, it's like watch out.
Yep.
And there's a lot of guys on the team that I think that are like that, that they have all the athletic abilities to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go catch the ball, they can go run hard, they can go do whatever, but they got to have that extra bit that's just a little bit of an intangible. And so they've got
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And that's something that we're just going to have to figure out as we go. But to hear that John Mateer's doing that is a big plus.
Right. No, totally agree. Um, what I'm about to say is gonna shock our small little group of people that listen to our podcast. Um, Bill Bedenbow is back. That is what gives me hope this season. Dude, the reports out of camp and with Logan Howland out, Heath Ozada out. Like, I think even Jake Taylor is still dealing with some different issues health wise, right? Those are three guys that Taylor was expected to be a big time starter and contributor last year and could never get healthy, right? Howland and Ozada were. Once you had that many guys go out last year, right? Sexton, etc. Everybody was terrified of what was behind, right? Like we knew Troy Everett was out. Hickman went out. We were like, oh God, we don't have a center, right? Sexton goes down. It's like, oh Lord, we don't have a tackle. Like there was just terror across the board. You currently have Jacob Sexton running, and there are multiple people saying that Jacob Sexton is going to be watching from the sideline because Michael Fasusi is that good. And so
Yeah.
it's going to be Howland to start, Fasusi behind, and Sexton's going to kind of be your swing offensive lineman, right? EPL is battling for the left guard position. Ryan
Hey,
Foje, I know, Ryan Foje, hey, hey, is battling for the right guard position over Fabechi Wiwu, right? And right now you got Simmons holding down the right tackle position. Okay. That's pretty dang solid. And if you get Howland and Ozada back, okay, your two deep all of a sudden becomes Howland followed by Fasusi. It becomes Ozada followed by EPL. You've got Troy Everett at center. It sounds like Josh Iasosa is really coming on strong at center. And so he's going to be there. Now, I do think they might go get a portal guy to be a little bit more experienced at the center position as a backup. At right, you're going to have Fabechi Wiwu, who, by the way, wasn't awesome last year, but he was, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's not going to get destroyed. Followed by Ryan Foje. And then you have Derek Simmons, and you're going to have Jacob Sexton, who can swing right or left tackle, who, again, I don't believe since the knee injury that Jacob Sexton is some first round pick, but he knows his job and he's going to play hard and he's going to give you something, right? More, he's going to give you more than Spencer Brown is going to give you out there at any tackle, right? So the offensive line has been completely transformed because of this recruiting class. Completely transformed
and last
because
year's,
this
yeah.
that and let's be real, as much as yes, were the quarterbacks developed? No. Was anybody schemed open? No. Was the offense an absolute nightmare? Yes. But was the offensive line absolutely trash and did not help contribute anything to this offense? Absolutely 100% yes last year until the very end of the season. You turn the offensive line around, you automatically take this offense from the 120s into the 70s. And then if Arbuckle is everything he's cracked up to be with a little bit of John Mateer, this offense vaults itself in the top 30. And if you can have a top 30 offense with even anything close to the defense you had last year, which I think you will, folks, how do you not get 9 wins? How do you not get 9 wins with that defense?
Yeah, I mean, there's there's a lot of positives to this team. I mean, I think a lot of Senior Nation's cautious because we were all excited about last season.
I was not.
Um,
You want I'll give it up to myself. I said this team was not going to be good last year.
okay. Um, I'll give it to you. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I said, the thing is that I like I said, just to like I said, I'm gonna toot my own horn because I'm gonna take it back at you. I was high on the EPL train. Even when he played last year, I was like, buy me more stock in that guy.
Yep.
Like, I know the bar was low, but you put him in, and I was like, bro, he's doing vastly better than anybody else has. I mean, I know that he's not playing, 80 snaps a game or whatever, but it's like when he got put in, he's immediately better than whoever else played at any point in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, we knew that he was going to have to mature. Usually when you get offensive linemen, it's
Right.
very rare that you get somebody that comes in and starts as a freshman.
Right.
Like if Fasusi can do it, that's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you got a guy that's you've developed now, and I believe in Bill Bedenbaugh to develop. I think he's proven that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just been getting the pieces to do it,
Right.
right? Um, and so yeah, I think that's going to be. I think they're going to be. I mean, they have to be better this year, or BV's looking for a job.
Yep.
Um, but I do think that they're like the offensive line. I think is going to be vastly improved. I don't disagree with you. I think the weakness in everything you listed is Everett. I don't hate Everett, but I don't think he's an elite or great center. I think he's a very, very serviceable center,
Right.
is how I feel about Everett.
I think that's
He's
very
not
fair.
gonna he's not gonna be an All-American. He's not gonna be all SEC. He's gonna do his job. Um, so you worry about him if you are playing in Alabama or Georgia, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
worry about those sorts of games, but everybody else, he's probably gonna be able to hold his own at least. So
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, I think that's positive. I mean, I think there's a lot to look forward to, and we're gonna have to, it's going to be a weird off season this year. No spring game, and
Yeah.
everybody's canceling their spring games, and so I don't know how much you invested in your trust into what came out of spring games, but still, it's
Right.
just a different atmosphere we're going into this year. So I'm sure we're going to have to talk a lot more about it coming towards the end of spring. But
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, the spring game couldn't tell you everything, but you did get to see with your own eyes how fast is he really? How does he come out of a cut, really?
yeah,
Um, how does this running back see, with his vision? You can see those kinds of things. You can't always tell exactly because it's such a vanilla offense against vanilla defense and all those things. Um, but man, yeah, I mean, of all the things coming out, all the John Mateer stuff, great. All the Giovanni Gibson stuff, great. Like all that's great. But hearing about the offensive line without two of your main guys, who I believe will be starters week one, is highly encouraging. And like you said, and I've always said, Bill does not struggle to develop. Bill's problem had become the last few years that Bill was constantly trying to develop Jags into first rounders. And now getting guys that are legitimate first rounders and developing them, that's a game changer. And look, check this out, Jared. We haven't talked about Darius Afalava because he tore his ACL in high school. So he can't practice. And we haven't even talked about Owen Hollenbeck, who, by the way, looks like a freaking giant out there compared to everybody else and might very likely play center. And we haven't talked about Daniel Akinkumi, who moves really well. He's just still new to football. And so, like, again, between last year's class and this year's class, and Derek Simmons coming in, and here's the other thing. I still think Fabechi Wiwu could be a good lineman, but let's be honest, nobody was taking his job last year. There was nobody in that room to take his job. You better buckle up right now and you better strap on a chin strap. Because Logan Howland, if you don't pull it together, Fasusi's going to take your job. Jacob Sexton, you're going to be sitting and watching if you don't come and strap it up and get after it. Fabechi, you better get your butt moving. You better figure out how to pull on a counter play and find somebody and block them because if you can't, EPL will or Ryan Foje will. And we've talked about this. Competitive depth brings out the best in your team. And so knowing what they have in that room right now is huge. And look, you could even go the other side. David Stone being 303 or 305, whatever he's listed at right now. Love it. There was some video that came out of PJ today, and I'm going to continue to say it. I don't think PJ has any bend. He's not super flexible, but dude, his first step is legit, and the length of his arms are forever. And so if he can figure out how to get off the ball fast and stick an arm out and hold it tight on that tackle, nobody should be able to get hands on him. And he
Yeah.
should wreck, in that situation. And look, Teddy Lehman talked about it all last year. If the offense can move the ball where you get in the fourth quarter and you're up 2 scores, guess what? You can put PJ on the field and say just that. Take off, like blast off the line, shove that arm and long arm that dude into the quarterback because they got to throw the ball. And we will let our cheetahs and our linebackers and everything else clean everything else up. Just take the right angle, take your guy and drive him into the quarterback. That's a whole R Mason. That's why R Mason blew up. R Mason played good throughout the game, but he began to blow up when you played Houston and you're up 2 scores. He
Right.
blew up when you're playing two line because he can pin his ears back knowing that 9 out of 10 plays are going to be a pass play. They got to score and they got to score fast. And that changes everything on the defense. And it could really allow him to to really be a force if he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of hope for this team. Last year I said the floor was 6 and the ceiling was 8. I continue to say I really believe that the floor for this team, if everything continues and they stay healthy, we'll see how it progresses. But right now, today, the floor on this team is 9 wins for me.
Yeah, I think still floors or nines saying the floor is nine is a little bit of a stretch for me. I'd say 7 or 8, but yeah, I mean 7 or 8 is still I think if we only win 7 games, I think BB loses his job too though. So
Right. Oh, I mean, the lowest you can get me to go is 8. That is by far the lowest you can get me to go. And I just think
let me
that
let me
there.
let's ask this. Let me ask this right now with where we're at right now. That's I think you light bulb me a brilliant question.
Okay.
Sitting right now, how many wins does OU need this season for BV to come back next year?
I think 8 is what he would need to come back because all the metrics are saying, which I think the metrics are off this year, but all the metrics are saying they have the number one hardest schedule in America. So if you can win 8 games with the number one toughest schedule in America, okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially coming off a 6-win season, I get it. Now, I think those metrics are wrong, okay? Because the metrics like the S&P plus, okay, for instance, still has Texas as like, I don't remember what they're ranked, like somewhere in the teens, I think is where they're ranked. You're replacing your quarterback and you're replacing your entire offensive line. Why did I say OU's floor was 6 wins last year? You're replacing your quarterback and you're replacing your entire offensive line. Like that is a recipe for a disaster in the SEC, especially. Like you're telling me Dominic Williams is going to be scared of a first-time starter on Texas's O line? No.
Yeah.
Jaden Jackson now, after a year of experience, you think he's scared of a first-time starter? No. And as good as Arch Manning, I believe, actually is, even though I talk trash completely on him as a recruit, I think he's legit. He has not been out there for enough snaps against live bullets. He has not. He is like, and a guy like BV is going to put him in a spin cycle. Kirby Smart's going to put him in a spin cycle. Like, those guys have too good of defensive minds to let first time. Now, where OU has the advantage is yes, they replaced their quarterback, but they're replacing their quarterback with a guy who's played and is running the exact same offense with the same quarterback coach and with the same offensive coordinator.
Okay, so and here's okay, so that let me ask you one more question. We'll start wrapping this up. What two teams do you think will be who are you going to predict to be in the SEC championship this year?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
I already have mine.
Mm, man, oh man. Let me think. I don't think it will be them. Do not think it will be them. Huh. I don't remember. Okay, this shows just how okay this podcast is. Did they do East and West or did they just do
No,
best
there's no
records?
divisions.
There's no
Best
divisions.
records.
That's right. Okay. So with no divisions, ooh, man, that gets tough. I'm gonna say Tennessee. Huh. I want to say OU, but Florida.
I was gonna say OU in Florida.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think DJ
Okay.
Lagway is legit.
Yep.
Like you said, there's a lack of experienced quarterbacks, and I think Florida has the talent. It's just getting it to show out, and I think the
Yep.
fact that they kept that staff intact says that there's some signs that that's on the way. They showed some signs last year. Once
Yeah.
Lagway came in,
Yep.
it looked way better as a
Yes, it
whole
did.
football team.
Yes, it did.
So I think
And a
they're going to be a
lot of
threat this year.
young talent that Napier's brought in there that's now playing and getting their opportunity, right? The other team to look out for is, I think, South Carolina. I think with
Yeah, I was going to say
Sellers
South
being there,
Carolina.
right, with Sellers returning, and he showed last year, he's a dang good player. And then they've got, uh, oh gosh, what's their DN's name? But that freak of a freshman
Yeah,
um, that they've got on the defense. I mean, they're going to be a problem. They lost some offensive linemen, they lost some things, but like those are some of the teams. Like all those teams, what do they have in common? They've got a lot of their offensive line coming back and their quarterback coming back, right? Um, you know, Florida's always got defensive players. Um, and then, like I said, with South Carolina, you've got one of the freakiest defensive ends that we've seen in a while. That was only a freshman last year and is only going to get better. So, like, those are the teams. Whereas, again, Texas is replacing a ton. And not to mention, nobody's talking about the fact that Texas has lost a ton of their staff. There have been
yeah,
three or four of their staff members that have gone to the NFL or to other jobs. Like that matters. That changes a lot within that locker room and with everything else changing. And so I think Texas, will they still be good? They've recruited too good not to be good, right? But that's a team that's going to take a big dip next year. Now, 26, they're going to be a problem, a major. I think they're a force for the national championship in 26. As much as I hate to say that, I think that that's the reality for them. I think Bama in 26 is going to be a force for the national championship because DeBoer's going to have his guys are going to play their guy this year at quarterback, and he's going to come around into his second year. I mean, that's just the norm. Like that's what I kept saying about OU. OU was going to take a massive dip last year, and if Jackson Arnold was everything you believed he was going to be, 25 was the year that they were going to make their run, right? Obviously Arnold leaves, but you replace him with technically a better quarterback and a better system. So this is the year that OU needs to be in the 9-win category
yeah,
this year.
absolutely. Yeah,
So I'm just going to keep beating that drum. I know, like I said, the S&P Plus stuff still has OU with the toughest schedule in the U.S., and I get that. But I just think some of those teams they have up there, it's all based on recruiting rankings. For Texas, that's exactly what it is. It's recruiting rankings. But like Texas, I believe ranked in the S&P Plus, I believe they're ranked 103rd in returning production.
yeah,
Okay. So I understand they recruited really well, but can any of those guys actually play?
yeah,
We'll see. Now, Anthony Hill, dude, like, dude, right? Like, but they lost all their receivers again. I mean, just different things like that, that it's like, oh, it's no big deal. I mean, it was what everybody at OU was saying last year. In Bill, we trust. It'll just work. It's like, it doesn't just work. Like it has to be proven out. Like we got to see it. And so I think they take a major dip. I think Alabama takes a small dip backwards. Georgia even I think will take a small dip backwards, And then I think there's other programs we play next year like Auburn that's still coming. They
I think still think Georgia's going to have the best F1 team in
Oh
the
my
nation.
gosh. Oh my Lord. Just stop. Just stop. Oh my gosh. So, all right, that's all the sports stuff. Anything else that we should know about? Like you're kind
I'm
of
telling you right now, watch Severance, brilliant show. Oh my
okay.
God, it just
Okay.
wrapped up season two.
Okay.
It is so good.
Well,
Um,
I'm still binging Reacher and I got done with both seasons over
Reacher's okay. Reacher's
uh
okay. Yeah,
it's been fine. It's been fine.
it's an
Uh
enjoyable show. Like I watch it, but it's not. I don't like Severance was like I'm waiting for this to
yeah.
happen. Like
I did get through both seasons of Silo over the last month or so.
yeah, it
Um
was pretty good. Yeah.
Silo, I loved. I'm all in on Silo. Like it was amazing. And I still have so many questions and
Another here's another show that recently discovered. White Lotus. Have you seen White Lotus?
no, have not.
I will say this: the last episode of White Lotus. There's three seasons, and they're it was funny. So I started watching it with the lady, right?
Right?
And she was like, "Don't worry about it." Like season three dropped, and we were like, "Let's start watching." She just watched season three. Like they're not connected, and I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then we watched season three. Well, it turns out there is a connection that's woven to all three, so I had to catch up on the other ones. But anyway, phenomenal one. This new season is really really good. Um, but the last episode that just aired, if you get to watch it, you'll know exactly what it was. The most uncomfortable like I've been watching a show on
Wow.
TV. Like it was just I was like, oh man.
Oh, okay. Now
So
I
it's still
don't.
good, but there's just it's not it's I should say it's just it's a very awkward
Yeah,
thing. It's
right.
not like yeah, I can't say much without spoiling it. But anyway, really good show. So yeah, I've been enjoying that. And then obviously we're playing I'll give you a shout out. We play have an online dynasty. Daryl and I had to play, and Daryl won. Such crap, dude. Such crap. EA college football can just absolutely kiss my rear end because I'm kicking a field goal to tie the game, and like my kicker decides to take lunch in the middle of the kick, so it
Extra
gets
point.
blocked.
Extra point.
Extra point. Sorry, extra point. So I lose by one. So and then Troy's talking trash. I'm still so annoyed with Troy. He made me play you at home. And then like the rest of my schedule was so I'm like next year I'm gonna be like, no, Troy, you're gonna sit down with me
Okay,
and do my
let's
schedule.
also be clear. All right, so in our dynasty, we all started with what was it? C level ranked.
It was
Um,
it'd be like 2 stars or less, I think. And we
yeah,
all had like one and a half star schools.
right. So Jared started with Air Force and has been built. He has built them to a college playoff perennial every year in the league. So kudos to you, my friend. Um, I have upgraded to West Virginia from where I was at South Alabama. I've upgraded to West Virginia, who I also have gotten in the playoffs the last 2 years. Um, Troy, on the other hand, somehow got LSU right out the gate as his first job, and he is currently sitting on 12 five-star recruits in his
He
current
started
class.
he's yeah, he did start out. I remember where he started out
East
at.
Carolina
East Carolina, yeah. And then he's at LSU now. Yeah. So
at
he's
LSU.
yeah.
So ridiculous. And so it's not like I've upgraded to OU, when you say playing me at home and things. I mean, it's West Virginia, but
Well,
but
still, I'm playing Air Force, who's not playing in the Mountain West, and then he also set my schedule, so now I have like 10 games in a row with no bye. So now I'm like getting to the later part of the season, and so all like my running back is just beat to hell, and I'm like I'm just trying my best, man.
hey,
So
my little five-star quarterback is pretty dang legit, though. I'm not gonna lie. True freshman. He keeps bumping in and out of the Heisman conversation, but still, I'm like, you're a true freshman. You don't need to win the Heisman this year. We'll do that. We'll do that next year. Like that's fine.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Anyway,
but no,
it's
it's
been
been
fun.
fun.
So I've already played my game. So I had a receiver put up 300 yards of receiving, so I was happy about that.
Oh my
I'm just trying to
gosh.
get a best receiver award because it helps your tradition, I think, or something. I don't know, but it's been fun. I've been loving playing that game with you guys.
Yeah, it's been a good run, and yes, what although we also need to make a point that while Troy is at LSU dropping all the five stars, our man Tyler is the two-time defending national champion
Yeah,
in
with
our
Minnesota. I actually defeated
with
Troy in the
Minnesota.
playoff last year. Maybe that's why.
Yes,
Maybe
you
he's a little
did.
salty with me. He's a little salty with me. I
That
just
is
ran it
what it
down
is.
his.
I forgot about that.
I just ran it down his throat. He was getting so mad because he was like every play, my linemen were getting to the second level, and he's like, "Dude, I'm LSU," and I'm like, I don't." I was like, I didn't expect this. I'm gonna be honest with you, but I just ran it down his throat the whole game. So,
Oh, love it.
Anyway, but yeah, been a lot of fun. So we'll
That's
have to talk a
awesome.
little bit more about it. We'll try to. I guess we're gonna try to do this more regularly again. Um, but yeah, there's a lot. Like I said, dude, I will tell you, start Severance
Okay.
and you will be hooked. First season's phenomenal. I thought the second season was phenomenal. Um, the core, like the cinematography, is just next level. It's just such a brilliant show. So you'll really enjoy it.
That's awesome. And by the way, update Thunder.
7261. I'll give you the real update since I'm
Yeah,
ahead.
what is it on yours?
7261.
72-61. They were up 20 something at halftime.
They were at
So
20. Yeah, they're up at 22 at one point when I looked over. So yeah.
so yeah, it's where I'm at right now, it's a 16-0 run in 2 minutes and 30 seconds for Sacramento. I'm behind you, but they went on a 16-0 run to start the third, apparently. Um, and now looks like the Thunder are trying to make a move to spread it, spread the lead out a little farther and make it a little more comfortable. So,
Yep.
anyways, hey, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate all of you guys that listen to us. Mo, Nemo, Swayze, the true OGs of following the pod.
Maybe Brady listen. He's an OSU fan, but he pops in
Yeah,
every once in a while just to talk
yeah.
trash to me.
Which,
So
by
yeah,
the way, really quick, did you see the Gundy comments?
did not.
That the spring game needs to come back, but it needs to be a Bedlam spring game that's home and home every other year between OU and OSU.
He actually said something half intelligent. Holy crap.
I know. It said charge
He
$25
must
and
he
it
must
goes to
put
our NIL
you
funds.
know what? He must have put his liquor bottle down before he went to work that day. Must have put it down that day.
Oh my gosh. So interesting comments from the Mike Gundy. But, anyways,
Yeah.
hey, we're having a great time. We hope you guys are too. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Daryl. That's Jared. And we will talk to you guys later.
Night Baker.